Welcome to Let's R.A.P.P, where we invite you to rise above personal perception. We want to thank you for tuning into this segment where we're going to talk today about what makes reality real. Now, I'm Denika Carothers and this is
Nabiyah, An-Nur.
Okay, and we are very grateful to be able to be with you. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this subject, I want to talk to you. Our first segment that we did, the difference between truth and perception, we edited it to 4 segments on YouTube because for me personally, I look at the length of a video before I decide whether or not I'm going to watch it. So with that in mind, I wanted to consider people's time. But we really like to get your feedback on it because we got some feedback. People were saying that they wish that the whole thing was made available, that they didn't realize that there were additional parts. So we want to hear from you. Would you like it to be in 4 parts? Because what we're going to endeavor to do is make these hourly segments and divide them into 4 parts. Or would you like to see it in its entirety? And what we're thinking about in this moment is making it available in its entirety and maybe 1 to 2 parts. But we'd really like to hear from you on what is better for you because we're considering our viewing audience always because we're rising above personal perception together. So I'm so excited about this segment today, Nabiyah. I was ready to do this after we finished the first segment.
Yes, he was like, where?
I was ready. What makes reality real? Now, it has been said that reality does not create your perception. Your perception creates your reality. And in doing some research for this show, I came across some very, very interesting quotes. I came across a quote by Plato that says, "Science is nothing but perception," which I found very interesting because we are taught or conditioned to the fact that if it can't be proven scientifically, then it is not real. But we know that perception is based on your belief system, your environment, your experiences, as we talked about in our last segment. And then Deepak Chopra said, there is no fixed physical reality, no single perception of the world, just numerous ways of interpreting world views as directed by one's nervous system and the specific environment of our planetary existence. What I found very interesting about that quote is that there are different realities, I believe, personally. There's a physical reality, and then there's a non-physical reality. And the non-physical reality has been a great part of my experience over the last 10 years. And because of that, my physical reality has shifted dramatically.
Would you like to share an example of what you mean about your physical reality shifting and how so?
It really came about through my experience with non-physical things, spiritual things. Things that I ironically was terrified about as a child. Always had a very acute awareness to the spiritual realm and the spiritual side, but wanted nothing to do with it. Because I was raised in an environment, influence that spiritual beings, they just came to make you afraid, pull your toe, move you out of the bed while you were sleeping, you know?
Doing some wickedness or some mischievousness.
Moving stuff, and it was all very, very scary, and I really, really did not want any experience with that. And I remember a best friend of mine passed, and I want to say it was 1990 or 91.
Okay.
And he and I were extremely close. And he was murdered, and it was like one of those unsolved things. Nobody knew what had happened, you know, and I just like started kind of like talking to him in the air, you know, because I was really disturbed by this whole thing. And he came to me one night in a dream. I was in the dream state, but this was an actual encounter that I had. And, you know, he was on my couch in this appearing. He was on my couch, but I couldn't see him at first. And then I said, you know, I want to see you. I could hear him talking, but I couldn't see him. I said, I want to see you. But as he started to take form, I turned my back on him because when he was in the coffin, it didn't look like him at all. You know, in reality, it didn't look like him. And I turned my back and I said, I only want to see if you look like how you look, not if you look like how you look in the coffin. And when I turned around, he was fully visible and he didn't have a shirt on. Now, he was shot 5 times. And when I looked at him, I could see 5 bullet wounds in his body. And, you know, it went on for a little bit more, but I feel like he was coming to communicate something to me with regards to what had happened in his passing. So it went on a little bit more, but I woke up out of that dream, like something happened in the end of it, and I woke up like that, like the same thing that was going on in the sleep state.
You had an emotional reaction to
and
it.
so I realized that this was not a dream. This was actually something that happened. And this is the thing with reality, because that was real to me. That was absolutely real to me. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Somebody else hearing that story might say, oh no, that's just a dream, because they haven't experienced anything like that.
Right.
But for me, that was my reality. And that was a non-physical reality, because that didn't happen in, of course, my awakened state, which we consider to be, you know, a physical reality. But that was the beginning of me really looking at, okay, what is real in terms of what we see and what we don't see? And more specifically, people communicating with you after they have passed from this physical existence or physical reality.
Thank you for sharing that. What I would like to add, I was trying to, the only thing that I did to prepare for today, other than praying and asking to be anointed with a clearing of no preconceived ideas that weren't in alignment with what the divine will is. And I say that because I think we mentioned in our previous segment that although this is not a religious or a spiritual show, we are spiritual beings. Yeah. And so a lot of our perceptions are going to be reflected or reflective of that. So the only thing that I did was I really tried to think about how can I define reality for myself in this moment of where I am in my current awareness. And because I have so much that I see, sometimes it's hard for me to hone that in and channel that into one thing, because as I'm trying to explain things to you guys or share that in conversation, it kind of starts taking off like branches to a tree, as you probably have seen.
Keep it here, honey.
And keep it up in the other segments. But this is what I wrote to share. Reality for me is an energetic imprint or impression of data in formation, and that data is comprised of light and sound, of varying frequencies and harmonics, blending much like instruments in an orchestra or storyboards in a movie to produce one synergistic melody or one synergistic picture. And what I mean by that is that there are so many things that feed into what we perceive of as reality. Do thoughts create reality? I ascribe to the concept that it does. However, I also believe that there are other things going on that feed into the whole dance of how that shows up. For instance, you know, again, if you ascribe to any of the ancient texts and you consider yourself to hold them as holy, then you would ascribe to what has been written, which in several of the scriptures, but specifically in the Bible, it says that it is already written, that every hair on every head has been counted for, that everything is already known that will ever be. And so if you accept that, then I guess the question then becomes, what exactly does that mean as far as in our ability to co-create? I want to say co-create because I'm not the deity in my singular incarnate form, and meaning first source, or what some people call God. I am not in this incarnate expression that divine presence. So I want to concede to the fact that there is more going on. So if we ascribe, for those that ascribe to these ancient texts and accept that is true, what does that mean? We have a level of awareness that is now being birthed it has been birthed for quite some time, but mass consciousness is now starting to catch up with it, and that's what I mean by being birthed, that it is becoming commonplace. It's not an esoteric understanding anymore, that thoughts create perception, and our perception creates our reality. But to what degree?
Well, right there, I think that's very interesting, what you say with regards to that. To what degree? And one of the things that I truly believe is that reality changes over time. We go back to eons ago, I don't know how many years, but eons ago, the reality was that the world was flat.
Yes.
You know, and that was a reality for people for a very long time. We have come through many different ages. We've come through the dark age. We've come through the information age. We've come through the industrial age. And I believe now we're stepping into the intuition age, where people are really going deeper on the inside. They're really realizing that there is more to reality or to this life than that which is physical, than that which we see with these eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you follow metaphysics at all, they give credence to the third eye a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, we don't see an eye in the middle of our forehead. So if you're someone who bases reality based on what you see, then that could be ridiculous to you. But if you're someone who bases reality on a knowing, you know, that which is deep inside of you that you can't escape. And sometimes you're not even able to explain it to people, you know. It's like you got to come to terms with this reality for yourself, especially when it changes. But I know, you know, growing up in the church, I remember hearing about New Age, the New Age wave. And so that was like so demonized.
Yes, like, don't be one of those New Agers.
Don't be one of those New Agers. But ages have changed all along, and we get so caught up in these words now.
Yes.
You know, this is one of the things that I always say, we get so caught up in words. When words change all the time, I remember the reality when I was in high school was that if somebody called you a dog or someone referred to you as dog, they were insulting you. That was like the lowest thing anybody could call you. Now the reality is when I call you my dog, that's like a term of endearment. You my spy, you my chick, you know, it's so words change all the time, but we get so caught up in things that we can't even consider the possibility of change or something being different. And that's pretty much my concern in this time, because people are so fixed on where they are that really what the bottom line is that they are terrified of change.
Absolutely.
They are so fearful of change because physical reality gives rise to the idea of separation. And separation gives rise to the experience of fear. And it's fear that prevents us from doing so many things. And, you know, this is one of the things that I really pray will come out in Let's R.A.P.P. The need to put fear to the side and just let everything be as it is.
I think you make an excellent point with the separation aspect and fear. And the way that I see it, and I didn't articulate it like this years ago, but I do ascribe to the idea that there are really two states of experience at its core. There are many different variables, and it can show themselves like fractions. You know, you have a half, and a half can turn to 4/8, and you can have 8/16, or you can have 24/48. But at the end of the day, that's still just a half. It's just expressed differently.
Right.
So for me, love is one state of experience, and fear is the byproduct of the lesser experience of love, or the absence thereof.
Yes. Yeah.
And so then you look at fear as your head of the family, the way you would look at a half. You can't break a half down any further than you can't break a fourth down any further. This is called the heads of the family in mathematics. Now, I know some people hate fractions, and I understand. But I allude to that because it's the simplest things in our systems that lead to these higher knowings that we don't even relate the mathematics to the spiritual.
Help us to love fractions, Nabiyah. Help us to love
We're not
fractions.
going there. People are not going to love fractions. But my point is that there's so many different expressions of this one truth. The truth being that fundamental principle that stays static or seemingly static. So you have your law of vibration, you have your law of attraction, you have your law of reciprocity, and so on and so on. These laws are considered the head of the family, or these control variables, if you will, that affect different aspects of the equation, or what it is that we experience. So fear being the head of the family, out of fear you get grief, you get hatred, you get anger, you get lust, and so on and so on and so on. And over here in love, you get cheerfulness, you get joy, happiness, peace. Bliss, peace, and so on, laughter, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so does the aspect of fear, it would show up as a negative aspect. Although negative doesn't mean bad per se. Right. We have to appreciate the nature of a thing.
Absolutely.
And how that shows up in the equation. Right. And the same way everything that's light is not good, or everything that's positive is not good. I mean, and we talked about this before in a joking way, but you want a negative, result when you go in for an HIV or AIDS test.
Or a test for cancer.
Yeah, or a test for cancer. Yeah. You don't want a positive result.
Absolutely.
You want a negative result. So it's negative and positive is going back again to mathematics, is on that integer line, and just understanding the appropriation of the nature of a situation and whether or not the negative aspect of it is going to serve you greater, or whether the positive aspect is going to serve you greater. The same when it comes to love and fear. For me, fear is the shadow aspect of love. Love is the ultimate expression. However, that even needs to be in balance. And so the shadow aspect creates that balance. And when we experience, some type of, when we go out here and we experience something that could hurt us, in a very physical, very plain, and very simple way, we could be driving down the street and there's this huge pothole. Well, if we're fearless or unaware of those instincts of small pockets of fear that are really signals, right? It's a shadow aspect of our deeper selves, but that is a signal to us in this current reality. Hey, if I keep driving down there, I'm going to fall down in this hole and I'm going to hurt myself, But these are what the fear state or the shadow state is, what I consider the temporal state. The state that is meant to act intermittently in shorter frequencies of span.
And what's interesting too is the acronym FEAR, they break it down to false evidence appearing real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I so agree with that. But it's again in the appropriation. Is the false evidence serving me? Because in this physical reality that we're currently in, and I won't even go into fourth dimension and fifth dimension because we're still transiting through from the third. But a lot of us are still in what we believe to be hard-coded reality. We believe that this table is hard. We believe that this wall is hard. Yeah. And it's because the nature of a lot of laws that are in place that feed into the holographic expression that shows itself to be such. It is intended for us to have these experiences in this particular realm. So we have them based on the laws and everything else that is going on to varying degrees, all of which I cannot even explain, nor am I fully aware of what all of those things are.
But something you just said just now, with regards to this table appears to be hard, this wall appears to be hard. And this is where I am right now, personally in my own journey, because I'm really trying to understand the matrix and break that down. And what does that really mean? And if everything truly is an illusion, what does that really mean? Because this doesn't seem like an illusion. Like this is solid. But when you hear that everything is energy, okay, so who's not really a big science, physics, or chemistry lover in school, but one of the things I do realize about energy is it's dispersed everywhere. It could just be broken down into things. But when you see this, it's difficult to, this feels solid. And so for me, in my perception of reality right now, I'm willing to shift. I'm willing to go outside of what I've always understood to be true, because I really want to understand how can this be energy? And I would, if anybody has a high-powered instrument that you will show me, please, our email address, which I want everybody to know, is letsrapmedia@gmail.com, so feel free to contact us through there. But I'm willing to go outside of my understanding of reality with regards to that, because that's been a difficult thing for me. And for me, I'm a person, one of the things you'll notice of me and Nye, we're such a perfect balance and contrast to one another. I always tell her she's more that intellectual side, like with her terminology, and I'm simple. I'm like, give it to me ABC, don't go DEFG. If I can understand it in ABC, and so I'm a person, I prefer the simple version of it.
Right.
Even in my expression or my delivery, I want for a child to be able to understand it. But there are people who need that more intricate explanation or who can understand it. I'm a person, I go on information overload. I am very honest about that. Too much information coming at me and I can't take it. And so I've always looked at breaking down the whole Matrix thing as too much information. Like the first time I ever watched that movie, The Matrix, I came out of there with such a headache. And I did not like that movie.
I was so in love with that movie. Actually, that's still one of my favorite movies of all time. There's so many archetypes and so many deep principles in that movie, and a lot of people didn't fully understand it. And I'm not referring to people who just went in and maybe not be able to understand the higher concepts.
Right.
But as we were speaking again off camera about some lessons that I've studied in chamber when I was younger, and how those lessons are in code.
Right.
The same as the Bible in Christ said, especially the New Testament, that's heavily, or especially the gospel, the synoptic gospels that are that are written based on his word, says that to you, as he speaks to his disciples, to you I give the truth, but to others I speak in parables, so that in seeing they still may not see, and in hearing they still don't understand.
Right.
And so we know that a lot of the scripture is written in a way that has to be revealed. So again, this brings us back to what is reality.
Oh, what makes reality real?
Yeah, because it's like the reality of it is, this is what is hard written in the language that we can see with our eyes.
Right.
And then what takes us to that deeper understanding? What else feeds into that perception? Because we do have experiences, I know I do have experiences where I may be introduced to something that diametrically is opposed to what I believe. But something within me starts to open like a flower, and then that, what I want to say, spark of enlightenment hits, and then it's like, oh my goodness, what?
Or something gets your attention. Let me break that down and simplify. Like Oprah Winfrey says, you have an aha moment.
Yes, this is true.
Like something just hits you, and it's kind of like you said, it's not something that you've ever really given consideration to, and might even be something that you totally were against.
Right.
But the minute you hear it, something that spark, that intuitive ability, that third eye aspect of who you are says, trying to get your attention. Here, pay
and
attention.
we're not always ready for that. Even when we have an aha,
Right.
some of those ahas are not really ahas. We're like, No. I'm not trying to hear that. I'm not trying to go down that path. That is completely antithetical to what I think. And in all of our understanding and what we believe, and whether that would be scriptural, whether that would just be things we were taught in our environment, things we learn in school, things that are counter to what we know in science, whatever that is, we go.
But it's like I shared in the last segment, the difference between truth and perception. When I came upon that book, that obviously I was being directed to, and in the initial reading it was like, close the book, put it down,
And you had to hear read the book, Denika.
I heard the voice, and so that's why I want to really encourage people, don't be so blocked off to stuff, because like you said, the first time you saw The Matrix, And how old is the Matrix? Between 15 and 20 years old, something like that. Because
I don't
kinda
think it's
remember
that
what it
old.
was. Are you sure?
Of course, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I think
I'm
I
not
think it's
good
about
with pinpointing
50
time
I
sometimes.
think around 15 years of.
15 sounds closer.
Yeah, about 15 years.
Yeah, about 15. I don't think quite 20.
Okay. But when you saw that, that completely resonated with you.
It resonated with me so deeply
Right.
that I'm writing a book on the Matrix.
But when I saw it, it was like headache, don't want to see this movie ever again, regret going to see it. But here now, 15 years later, I'm at a place where I really want to understand that. So I think that's key too, understanding that, Nai's reality in the moment that it hits her is not necessarily going to be Denika's reality.
Right.
Because we're on two completely different journeys,
Right.
two completely different paths.
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about paths too. We can start off like this, and then there's a curve that brings us together at some point.
Exactly. Because I look at it as a wheel. This is the way I like to explain it, is that we have a cosmic wheel going on. And no two people or no two souls are exactly the same.
Right.
Everybody, there's like spokes on a wheel. They all have different origination points, meaning when we incarnate, we have different karmic issues going on. We have different familial purposes and passions and messages that we came to share. So we have a different point of origination from that perspective, meaning we didn't come in with the same information. We haven't all done the same work before. That's again, if you ascribe to past lives, I in fact do.
And so do I.
And so we all start on different points of the wheel. But we are all going to the same central location. Now, when you get to the center, even at the center, everybody has their own place. There's a notch that goes into the center, like a bicycle wheel, that sits there to hold that nucleus together. And we are in a centralized place, considered to be the unified center, to make that wheel turn very smoothly. But I liken that to our lives, how we are. And this is why it's so important to me that I do not choose to participate in convincing people of anything.
Right.
And which I know you feel exactly the same way, that our intention is simply to share our experience, and if you resonate with it, or if there's something there that resonates and you choose to be a part of and to explore more, then please do so. If it doesn't resonate with you, we understand. There's no objection, there's no fault, there's no judgment, there's no, oh, you don't know, or you're lost, or any of that, because we are all in a process of our own paths. And again, to make what you said, to describe what I said, more expounded in the way that you expressed it, I like even more, because it gives you a little clearer idea of what's going on, because our paths are not straight like what we perceive on the spokes of a wheel. And you're right, they can concave and they can curve and they can do all kinds of things and traverse each other and all kinds of things, but essentially we are all headed to the same place, to the center of truth. That truth could be the center of our divine selves, to the kingdom of God, however you want to ascribe it, to nirvana, to transcendence out of this body, to be able to do like a lot of the yogis do, when they are so connected. Their perception is so expansive and so transcendent that they can literally decide when they are going to ascend, prepare, and just lay down and go.
Well, it's like, that's why I like with your analogy of the wheel, because at the end of the day, everything is connected to the center. So we're all connected to that one place, but I want to just reiterate what you said earlier. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything.
Right.
Because I believe that our paths are our paths. It's like I tell my children all the time, if what I'm saying to you is garbage, take it and throw it in the trash can. If it makes sense in any kind of way, then just consider it a little bit. I mean, you might even be in a place at that point where you are led to consider it a lot. But if something makes you turn your head, and then you go down the street and you see something that resembles it again, and you got to turn your head again, and you go down and something is trying to get your attention. And that's all we just really want to encourage you, is just to pay attention, because what you consider real today, in 5 years may be completely different. You look at the computer and everything that's happened with technology. I mean, sometimes I'm blown away at what technology can do. But through technology, we get these reality shows all the time. And I really want us to touch on that. What is with all the reality shows? It's like everywhere you turn, that's all that's on now is reality shows. So I don't know how you felt about it, but in the beginning when reality shows first came out, my understanding was that this was real life, that they were following people around with cameras.
That was my understanding as well.
Okay, and picking up their life. But having had experience in television and editing, I am very aware that things get edited. I mean, if you're following someone around their whole life and you're trying to cut it down into an hour program, of course there's a lot of editing that gets done. So how do you decide what you cut out and how do you decide what you leave in? And in what order of sequence has all of this happened that we've seen? So behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that we who are viewing it through technology don't quite understand. And I look at reality shows now in a much different way because I do pay attention to the editing. It's a part of my background, and now having done Let's Rap, I'm back into it again. But you and I were having a conversation about this a few days ago, and you had said something about a wizard, that something came to your attention. I would really like for you to share that with our viewing audience.
It was the show, I can't think of R&B Divas. Mm-hmm. That's the show. I was watching that, and it was about, several singers and so forth, and following them around in their music career and their personal lives and kind of how they interact with one another. And during the reunion show, a lot of people were agitated to the point that some things were coming forth that they felt that they didn't agree to. And they were speaking as, I guess, openly as they could without getting into legal trouble, because from what I was understanding, they have signed a contract and there's certain things they cannot reveal. Right. So, but I guess they decided to coin this person behind the scenes as the wizard. And the wizard was purported to be puppeteering things to a certain degree. So basically, if something was going on that was happening very naturally, but they didn't feel that the ratings were high enough or that they were losing interest, they wanted to increase the drama. And so they would either lie to the different people who were participating in this show, or they would go to this person very boldly and very directly and say, look, if you want to renew your contract, you need to turn up the heat. We need some drama, this is boring, or whatever. And I found that very interesting because, it's not so much that I was naive or gullible to the aspect that this reality show was really their reality, because I don't connect with a show like that anyway. Right. For me personally, just because we love to share our spiritual translations of things, so everything in life for me is relative, including the reality shows. And I like to be abreast of what people are, in a common way, engaged in, so that I am able to connect with everybody. I don't want to put myself in a place where I'm unable to relate. So in looking at these shows, I'm looking at it in a way to expand on my connection. Right. Not only to the people that are on there and why they would do this, why they would put themselves through this, what is it they are trying to achieve, what message are they trying to get out, what are the producers' message trying to get out, and then also what are the people getting who is watching this.
What's so interesting about that, I just had to jot it down with the reality show, is wherever you are in your experience or reality is exactly what you're going to get out of the reality shows. And what the reality shows do,
is what they say, right?
And what the reality shows do is no different than what the media does. Okay, so I remember at one point I was watching Basketball Wives. I was into that. And Evelyn, I looked at her and I was like, I just wanted to counsel her, because as an intuitive counselor, this is what I do.
Me as well.
That's what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't buy into the hype of all of this contention and stuff. For me, I wanted to step in from a place of helping, because I understood that these are deep-seated root issues that are going on here. So I'm not feeding into that. But it's like the media, when the whole thing came up with the recession, and the media puts out there too what they want you to gravitate towards. I made the decision that I'm not participating in the reception, because my reality was that unless alien or other life forms had come from other planets and come and taken up all the cash and all of the resources
and decided to be a part of your physical reality.
Okay, unless they had physically moved all of the money somewhere, that it was here somewhere, and I had the ability to be able to find it. So my reality was not, we're in a recession. My reality was not lack. But there was a time when my reality would have been lack, and I would have gotten really nervous and very fearful about that whole situation. So where you are determines what you get out of whatever is presented to you.
I agree with that 100%. Like begets like. But then I think that takes it to another level. Where you are currently, how do you evolve then if you only attract what is like you resonantly in the current moment? So I think that there's a level of our beingness that is potentiality, or what is already in our past, so to speak, or what's written, or the composite that is not about where we are in our ego state of mind, but in our divine aspect, the God essence within us.
And you put that question out there, and I want to answer that from where I am, because I had that written down here. The only way to be transformed is for your mindset to be renewed. There's a scripture in the Bible, and I love it. As a man thinketh
in his heart,
so is he. And so transformation can only come about through a renewal of a mindset. And a renewal of a mindset can only come about through your willingness to look outside of the box, which is something that we talked about last week. And I wrote this down, and so I want to read it word for word. Transformation occurs by making a profound shift in the way you know things. How you make your world real to yourself must undergo deep revision. And so we can never get to a place now where we feel like we know everything.
Right.
Where we feel like what we know is the absolute. I always say, whenever we know everything, we won't be here anymore. You know, people who knew everything or found out everything, they're no longer here. As long as we're here, it's always.
I don't know anyone who did that.
It's personally. There's always an opportunity to learn. And we have to be willing, I feel, at every moment to expand the view of not only reality, but also of our own selves.
Agreed.
As well.
Just to add to that, or expand on that, and also to reiterate what I said during our previous segment. That is a tongue twister. Previous segment on what is the difference between truth and perception. So I love that scripture also. As a man, and this is something I stress, because I think that this is a critical piece that people need to really acknowledge, because I think they focus too much on the mind and they skip the other part of it, which is so a man thinketh in his heart. And I think that the scripture emphasizes that for a reason, because it could have left it to the mental faculty.
Right, I agree.
So a man thinketh in his heart, because the heart, if you go back into times of of Socrates and times of Plato, they knew during those periods, and they focused a lot on that the heart was the first brain, and I think we talked about that before. But as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. And so the heart, there must be a change of heart first and foremost, right? Because the heart is the way to the kingdom of God. And so if that's going to be, that has to be the purest. So for me, the heart transforms, and I was writing this down as it was coming to me, because I think I said this already, but maybe not articulated it the same way in the last segment, is that the heart transforms the mind. The mind transforms our behavior, and our behavior transforms our reality or our experience.
Right, that's right.
And even so, when we say transforms the mind, that's referring to beliefs, and all of that is kind of tied in there together. But I think it's important for people to understand, because this is why it does not, a lot of people, and this is what I was talking about when I was talking about the secret. When I was saying, well, this is not a secret, or, there's things that are missing. This is the aspect of what is missing from the secret. One of the aspects that's missing from the secret is the center of the heart. The heart must be anchored in that truth first. Yes. And so when they first did it, and the people we were talking about that were able, and I got some feedback from this. A few people told me, "Oh my goodness, I really related to the expression or the example that you gave about the secret, because I felt the same way. I got in there and I started using the secret's principles and everything was working for months, and then all of a sudden, nothing. And it's because that's when you got into your head. You moved from your heart and you started doing it from here.
Right.
And this is the thing, we cannot force. And so now I'm going to digress, as you know I do. You will either love me or hate me for it, but I can only be me. So this is where we go back into the moment where you were talking about this being hard, and whether or not, how can we perceive this as being energy? When we are in our heart, fully in our heart, at the perceptual level that you need, or access to that gateway, or that level of reality, like certain psychics, or certain medical diagnostics, and certain other types of clairvoyance, they can see the auric field. And I do ascribe that there's an auric field, and I actually have proof that it exists. I've had personal experience with it.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll definitely have another show
chakras.
out. Yeah. So some of them can see the auric field, right? Some of them can see 1 layer, some can see 2, some can see 7. Some can actually, there are more than 7, but there are 7 primary, and most of the time you don't see anything back beyond that. And most people, when you read on the material, will only talk about the 7 layers. Okay, so they can see this auric field. That is energy. Some of them also can see this table as energy.
Right.
We have people that have that ability. And so because they can see that, and I think people, even those who can't actually see the table as energy, there is an empathic resonance, an understanding that comes vibrationally that translates to a language of their heart, superseding the egoic state of mind, which limits us. So what does that mean? It means that those who can move items with their minds using telekinesis, what is that really? It is a respect and a heart to heart, and I'm saying heart with respect to this energy, although the heart may not be the way we understand it as in a physical heart for humans, but there is a connection with that energy.
I don't want to stop you, but I'm just feeling I need to say something in this moment with regard to what you're saying.
Go ahead.
It's very much in alignment with people being able to heal their own physical bodies, which we have the power to do. And if everything is energy, if disease, in the energy field, if you are able to understand and connect with your heart, it can't be a head thing.
Right.
You have to believe that with your heart. And we have the ability to heal our bodies. This body was designed to heal.
It was, absolutely. I really believe that's why Spirit brought this particular form.
Right, but in your heart, you have to believe it's like a miracle. A miracle is not going to be any good to you if it's only in your head. It's once you connect with that with your heart. That's why you have people who experience miracles and you have people who don't experience miracles.
Right.
There has to be that heart connection.
Absolutely.
At all times. Like you talked about with the table. And this is how I got to the place of being willing to go deep into that, because I do have the ability to see the energy field of objects, of trees, of tables. And having had that experience, it helped me to understand. But until I was able to see that and reconcile that in my heart, outside of my head, because my head would have said, oh, this is because you blinked your eyes or you looked at the light before you looked at the table. Until I understood that from the heart, then I really understood what the power of being able to do that was for me.
Right. I think that is such a powerful piece that everyone can benefit from, regardless of what level they're on, is understanding what it means to live in the heart, to live from the heart. I think that's what Christ was teaching, and there's so many formulas. And I refer to Christ, like most people associate the biblical persona of Jesus, Yeshua, Ishua, however they want to pronounce it, depending on whether they're speaking Aramaic, Hebrew, or an English form of that. But the Christ, and I make emphasis when I say that. I don't know if people pay attention to that, but I never say Yeshua Christ, Jesus Christ, Yeshua Christ, the Christ, because the Christ is a position. It is an incarnate state of manifest awareness and perceptual ability. It is dealing, so you were talking about the matrix. So here we go, back to the matrix. On the tree, looping around again, there's layers or dimensions. The Christ consciousness is a 12th dimensional conscious manifestation or incarnate reality. When people talk about, oh, I don't think that the Christ really walked on water, I don't really believe he did all of these things, I absolutely do believe it. I've seen things just as profound in this current reality. And I really do ascribe to those abilities. I also, because it's the perception, the incarnate conscious ability, 12th dimensional consciousness. Right now we're operating from, a lot of us are still operating from 3-dimensional consciousness. We'll get into this a lot later as far as dimensions are concerned. That's another show. But right now we're moving into some of us are still experiencing the 3rd, 4th, and pieces of the 5th. But the 5th will be anchoring until 2017. That gateway and that stellar activation period is still undergoing. That's a whole nother segment that we'll get into at another time. I don't want to go off into something else. But because we can. We love to be like branched off. But so you look at these different levels of reality or these different levels of consciousness. And so when you think about the different dimensions that we have and understand that the Christ was a 12th dimensional being, then you can ascertain his perceptual abilities to higher states of consciousness, which allows him to better utilize what is the laws and the effect of those laws in this physical reality, because there was a divine agreement with what we perceive as water. Was he truly walking on water? It appeared so to us in the physical reality, thus those of us that were there, because we perceive water as the way we perceive water. Like you have this pool right outside your door here. If we were to go out there and walk on it, we see that as water, but actually water is energy as well. Right. All of this is energy, and so this is an energetic agreement. There is an alignment with that. And so, like I was explaining earlier in my definition that I understand is a little complicated maybe to some, or it will be too much information, if you will. But again, it's these different energetic impressions coming together and doing a dance or creating a melody, a melodic sound. And so he's dancing with that energy, or what we perceive as him, his energy is dancing, that Christ energy is dancing with that energy that is of water, and explaining how that expresses itself in this holographic reality. And he was giving that access to his disciples, and this was in a way of exchange for faith. What I find this is one of my favorite expressions or definitions of faith, and it's the one that's given in the Bible. It's so relative, because it says that faith is the substance of things hoped for. Now, when I think about substance, let's look at our general language. Substance is something that can be quantified. Right. It may not be tangible, like gas-ish. This is not tangible, but it is quantifiable, it is measurable. Substance of things hoped for. So that means that this is a quantifiable or measurable unit of energy that is utilized to create, or is a part of the manifestation of what is hoped for or desired. The second piece is the evidence of things unseen. Evidence, for me, in my language, evidence means proof. That means real. It means that it's real. It's something that can be also measured, something that can be experienced on some level. There is evidence of this, of things unseen. So for me, faith is not, I'm throwing a penny in a wishing well. Right. Oh, I hope this happens. Oh God, and bargaining. Oh God, please, if you just move this out of my way, if you just do this, then I'll do this. Bargaining. No. Again, the dance that Christ's energy had with the water is the dance that we must have with the divine, with First Source, acknowledging that and that expression of that on micro levels, on a microcosmic level and on a macrocosmic level, whether that be that I trust that. See, the thing is, this is faith. We don't look at it like that, but this is faith. I have faith that I can move my arm and pick up this pen, and then when I write, there's going to be something that comes out on this page that is going to be ink, and that is going to create a language, and I'm going to be able to read it. We don't understand that as faith, but that is a faith. And there's nothing in our mind that is going to tell us that that is not going to happen.
Well, I think that's a really good place for us to end today's show. Faith is the evidence of things unseen.
And the substance of things hoped for.
I want to end on the evidence of things unseen to just reiterate that reality exists in two different places, physical and non-physical. So that which you don't see, if it's evidence, if it's real, it's absolutely real. So again, we pose a question to you, what makes reality real? And I want to close by saying we have become an attention deficit society. And the advancement of technology has in some ways contributed to that. The explosion of reality shows is proof that somewhere inside of us, perhaps deeply buried, we do recognize a need for true reality and the unity that attention can bring. And at the end of the day, I think everything that is put in place is to help us to understand that we are one, to bring us back to that place of oneness. So we want to, again, thank you so much for tuning into this segment, and we really hope that it has helped you, that it has enlightened you in some way, because we are now living in an enlightened reality. And so the things that we see are temporal, but the things that we do not see are eternal. And so it's time for us to go beyond this physical and give some sort of credence to what could possibly be out there for us in the non-physical reality. Again, you've been with Denika Carothers and Nabiyah An-Nur, and we ask that you will join us again for our next segment, where we will talk about how do we create our own reality. Thanks again, and we invite you to rise above personal perceptions.